Hey, Stoic warrior, I want you to be honest with yourself for a second. How many times today did you look at someone else's life and feel a little smaller? Maybe it was a friend's new car. Maybe it was someone your age who's already made it. Maybe it was just a stranger online, living a life that looks better than yours from the outside. And in that moment, something in your chest tightened. A quiet voice whispered, "Why not me? What am I doing wrong?" If that sounds familiar, you're not weak, you're human. But here's what almost nobody tells you. That voice, the one constantly measuring you against everyone else, it's not protecting you. It's robbing you. Every single day you spend comparing is a day you didn't spend building. The Stoics understood something about comparison that most people today have completely forgotten. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world at the time, Emperor of Rome, still had to fight this same battle inside his own mind. And what he discovered, what all the Stoics discovered, is that comparison isn't just uncomfortable. It's a trap specifically designed by your own mind to keep you small. Today, we're going to break down 6 harsh Stoic truths about comparing yourself to others. Not comfortable truths. Not just focus on yourself fluff. Real, brutal, mind-shifting truths that once you understand them will change how you see every single person you've ever envied. Stay with me until the end, because each one of these builds on the last, and by truth number 6, comparison will lose its grip on you completely. Drop this in the comments right now. I am done measuring myself against everyone but me. Like this video if you're ready to break this cycle for good, and subscribe if you want more of this. Let's begin. Truth number 1. You are comparing your behind the scenes to their highlight reel. Here's what most people do every single day without even realizing it. They scroll through a feed of curated, edited, filtered moments, someone's best vacation, someone's biggest win, someone's most flattering angle, and they compare it to their own raw, unfiltered, messy reality. The argument they had this morning, the bills they're behind on, the body they're insecure about, the doubt they haven't told anyone about. This isn't a fair fight. It was never supposed to be. You're comparing a highlight reel to a behind-the-scenes reel, and then wondering why you always lose. Marcus Aurelius never saw anyone's highlight reel. He didn't have that problem, but he had a version of it. He saw senators who looked composed in public, generals who looked fearless in battle, men who appeared to have it all figured out. And he reminded himself constantly that appearances deceive. He wrote that we should not be concerned with what other people say or think or do, but only with what we ourselves do. Why? Because he understood that everyone is performing some version of themselves for the outside world while carrying a private war no one sees. Here's the brutal truth. The person you're envying right now is almost certainly struggling with something you know nothing about. Their highlight reel is real, but it's not the whole truth. And you are taking your full, complicated, 3-dimensional life and holding it up against someone else's 2-dimensional snapshot. That's not just unfair, it's mathematically impossible to win. So the next time you catch yourself comparing, ask one question. Am I comparing my whole story to their one good chapter? Because if you are, you've already lost a game that was rigged before it started. Drop this in the comments. I refuse to compare my chapter to their highlight reel. Truth number 2. Comparison is proof you've outsourced your worth. This one stings, but it needs to be said. If someone else's success can make you feel small, it means your sense of worth was never fully in your own hands to begin with. It was sitting somewhere outside of you, waiting to be measured against whoever walked by next. Most people don't realize this is happening. They think, I just want what they have, but underneath that wanting is something deeper. A quiet belief that your value as a person is determined by how you stack up against others, not by who you actually are. Epictetus, who was born a slave and owned nothing, somehow understood freedom better than most free men. He taught that we suffer not from events themselves, but from the judgments we attach to them. And one of the most dangerous judgments a person can make is this: my worth depends on being better than, or at least equal to, the people around me. Think about what that actually means. It means your sense of self is being decided by people who don't even know your name. A stranger's car, a co-worker's promotion, an old classmate's wedding photos. You're letting people who have never once thought about your existence determine how you feel about your own life. Marcus Aurelius wrote that very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. Not in your way of comparing, in your way of thinking. Here's the practice. Every time you feel that familiar tightness of comparison, pause and ask, whose definition of success am I using right now? Because if the answer is someone else's, you haven't just lost a moment of peace. You've handed someone you've never met the keys to your self-worth. Drop this in the comments. My worth is not for rent. I own it completely. Truth number 3. You don't actually want their life. You want your idea of it. Here's something almost no one admits. When you envy someone else's life, you're not actually envying their life. You're envying a fantasy version of it, edited down to only the parts that look appealing from a distance. You see their success, but not their 4 a.m. anxiety. You see their relationship, but not the arguments behind closed doors. You see their money, but not the debt, the stress, the family pressure that came with it. Aware, not comparing yourself to their reality. You're comparing yourself to a story you wrote about them in your own head, using only the evidence that supports the worst version of your own situation. The Stoics had a name for this kind of thinking. They called it a false impression, a perception that feels true, but hasn't actually been examined. Marcus Aurelius trained himself daily to question his impressions before accepting them as fact. He wrote, "Today I escaped from the crush of circumstances, or better, I cast them out, for the crush was not from outside me, but in my own assumptions." That's exactly what comparison is. A crush of assumptions you built yourself, then handed power over your own emotions. Here's the practice. The next time you catch yourself wanting someone else's life, get specific. Don't just say, I want what they have. Ask yourself, do I actually want their full life, every part of it, the parts I can't see, the trade-offs I don't know about? Or do I just want the one slice I'm looking at right now? Almost every time, you'll realize you don't actually want their life. You want a single highlight, ripped out of a much more complicated story. Drop this in the comments. I will not envy a story I never read in full. Truth number 4. Every comparison steals time you'll never get back. This is the part most people never calculate. Comparison doesn't just feel bad in the moment. It costs you something real, something you can't get a refund on. Time. Every minute spent scrolling, measuring, wondering why you're not further along. is a minute that didn't go toward your own work, your own growth, your own life. And here's the brutal math. That time is gone, not paused, not banked for later. Gone permanently, while the person you were comparing yourself to kept moving forward, completely unaware that you were standing still, watching them. Seneca wrote about this exact trap, that people are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful of the one thing in which it is right to be stingy. He understood that time is the only truly non-renewable resource we have, and yet it's the one thing people burn carelessly, often while staring at someone else's life instead of building their own. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly that he might not have much time left at all, not to create panic, but to create urgency, to stop wasting hours on things that don't move him forward. Comparison is one of the most efficient time wasters ever invented, because it feels like you're doing something, gathering information, staying aware, when really you're just standing still while pretending to move. Here's the practice. Every time you feel pulled into comparison, ask, if I spent the next 10 minutes building instead of comparing, what would I have to show for it? Then go do that instead. Because the version of you a year from now won't care how someone else's year looked. They'll only care what you actually built with your own. Drop this in the comments. Every minute I compare is a minute I don't get back. I choose to build. Truth number 5. The people you envy are probably envying someone else. Here's a truth that should bring you a strange kind of relief. The person you're comparing yourself to, the one who seems to have it all figured out, is almost certainly comparing themselves to someone else right now, feeling exactly the way you feel about them. It's an endless chain. The person with the nice car envies the person with the bigger house. The person with the bigger house envies the person with more freedom. The person with more freedom envies the peace someone else seems to have. Nobody is standing at the finish line, satisfied. Everyone is mid-race, looking sideways instead of forward. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man alive in his time, emperor of an empire that stretched across 3 continents, still wrote constantly about the emptiness of chasing approval, status, and comparison. If comparison couldn't satisfy a literal Roman emperor, what makes you think it will satisfy you once you reach the next milestone you're chasing? He wrote, how much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does, but only to what he himself does to make it just and pure. Notice he's not saying ignore other people exist. He's saying stop using them as your measuring stick, because the measuring stick is infinite. There is always someone further ahead, always, even for an emperor. Here's the practice. The next time you envy someone, remind yourself honestly, this person is also comparing themselves to somebody else right now and probably feeling exactly what you're feeling. You're not behind in some race that has a finish line. You're in a game with no end, and the only way to win is to stop playing it the way everyone else is. Drop this in the comments. I refuse to run a race that has no finish line. Truth number 6. Your only real competition is who you were yesterday. This is the truth that changes everything once it actually sinks in. The Stoics didn't measure themselves against other people. They measured themselves against their own potential, against who they were capable of becoming, not against who someone else already was. Marcus Aurelius didn't wake up each morning thinking about how to outshine a rival senator. He woke up asking how to be more disciplined, more virtuous than he was the day before. That was the entire scoreboard. Not them, him. Yesterday's version of him. This shift sounds small, but it changes absolutely everything about how comparison feels. When your only competition is yesterday's version of yourself, you can't lose to someone else's timeline anymore, because you're not even playing their game. Someone else's success stops being a threat and starts being irrelevant information, because it has nothing to do with your own progress. Epictetus taught that we should focus entirely on what is within our control, our own choices, our own effort, our own growth, and let go entirely of what is not, namely, everyone else's path. He said, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid with regard to external things." In other words, stop being so concerned with how you measure up to the outside world that you forget to measure up to your own standards. Here's the practice, and this is the one habit that will quietly dismantle comparison for good. At the end of each day, instead of asking, "How do I compare to them?" ask, "Am I better today than I was yesterday?" Not perfect, not ahead of everyone else, just better than the version of you that existed 24 hours ago. That question has no losers. Every single day you can answer yes, you win, regardless of what anyone else is doing. Drop this in the comments. My only competition is who I was yesterday. Closing recap. If you've made it this far, something inside you already knows this is true. Comparison was never really about them. It was always about a quiet, unspoken fear that you're not enough, exactly as you are, exactly where you are right now. And that fear has been running your mind for free for far too long. Let's recap the 6 harsh Stoic truths about comparing yourself to others. 1. You are comparing your behind the scenes to their highlight reel. 2. Comparison is proof you've outsourced your worth. 3. You don't actually want their life, you want your idea of it. 4. Every comparison steals time you'll never get back. 5. The people you envy are probably envying someone else. And 6. Your only real competition is who you were yesterday. None of these truths ask you to stop noticing other people exist. They ask you to stop handing them the power to decide how you feel about your own life. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire and still had to fight this battle daily. You are not failing by struggling with comparison. You are simply human. But now you know something most people never learn. Comparison is optional. It's a habit, not a fact of life, and like any habit, it can be replaced. So here's your challenge. The next time you feel that familiar tightness in your chest, that quiet, "Why not me?" don't push it away. Just ask one question instead. Am I better today than I was yesterday? If the answer is yes, you are already winning the only race that was ever real. If this helped you, like the video, drop your affirmation in the comments below. Share this with someone who's been silently comparing themselves to everyone but their own progress. And subscribe for more Stoic wisdom every week. You don't need to be ahead of anyone. You just need to be ahead of who you used to be. Drop this final affirmation in the comments. I am not behind. I am exactly where my own journey requires me to be.